Federal agents have uncovered a staggering fentanyl smuggling operation after discovering nearly $29 million worth of deadly narcotics hidden inside an Iranian tanker crew's luggage.
The port at Corpus Christi does not sleep, but it does grow quiet in the hour before shift change. The gantry cranes stop moving first. Then the trucks thin out. Then the gulls settle onto the bollards along berth 7, where a Liberian-flagged chemical tanker had been tied up since Sunday evening. The floodlights on the pier were the color of weak tea, and the water between the hull and the concrete had the stillness of something that had been asked, politely, not to move. Berth 7's motion sensors had been recalibrated 11 days earlier for a Coast Guard exercise. They had not been switched back on. Her name was Marisol, and she was 34 days into her rotation as a CBP entry specialist at the port of Corpus Christi. She was not a K-9 handler. She was not a boarding officer. She processed crew manifests in a windowless office 2 floors above the customs hall, and on the Wednesday morning in question, she was cross-referencing a 12-man crew list against the ship's last 4 ports of call when she noticed that one of the passport numbers on the manifest matched a passport that had been flagged 6 months earlier under a completely different name. Same document, different person. She did not radio it in. She printed the 2 records, set them side by side on her desk, and stared at them for what she later told investigators felt like a very long time. Marisol did not know it yet, but she had just become the first person outside the system to see it. The case would be logged as CBP 4718-MR, opened jointly with the Drug Enforcement Administration out of the Houston Field Division, with concurrent jurisdiction extended to Homeland Security investigations under the Maritime Narcotics Protocol. The target of record was the MV Sahand Arya, a 24,000-ton chemical tanker registered in Liberia, beneficially owned through a 2-tier holding structure, traced to Bandar Abbas, and crewed by 12 Iranian nationals, traveling on a mix of authentic and questionable seafarer documentation. On paper, it was a routine crew list verification. On paper. The first anomaly was the passport Marisol had flagged, which upon deeper review turned out to be one of 3 documents in the crew's papers that had been issued by the same regional office in Iran within a 14-day window in September of the prior year, a window during which that office was, according to State Department records, closed for renovation. The second anomaly was the ship's declared cargo manifest, which listed 18,400 metric tons of industrial glycerin bound for a chemical distributor in Houston, whose warehouse address, when checked, was a leased mailbox in a strip mall off the Gulf Freeway. The third anomaly was smaller than either of those, and it was the one that made the DEA liaison stop chewing his pen. One of the crew members, listed as an assistant engineer, had traveled through Panama, Rotterdam, and Jebel Ali in the previous 18 months on 4 separate vessels, none of which had any documented cargo relationship to the ship he was currently assigned to. He had, however, been photographed by port CCTV at each stop, carrying the same soft-sided Navy duffel bag. 3 small things. Each one, on its own, could be explained. Together, they could not. If you're still here, stay with me. This next part is where investigators stopped sleeping. And if you want more stories the headlines walked past, tap subscribe. Quietly, the way this whole case started. The targeted inspection was authorized on a Thursday, 41 hours after Marisol's initial flag. It was not a raid. The channel of authorization was a Customs and Border Protection secondary examination, escalated to a joint CBP DEA controlled inspection once the crew's luggage was moved to the exam hall. Under maritime protocol, crew luggage is inspected on rotation. The Sahand Arya crew had been rotated for inspection 3 times in the previous 2 years, and on each occasion, the inspection had been logged as clear within under 9 minutes per bag. The Thursday inspection would take 14 hours. The first bag opened belonged to the second officer, a man traveling under initials MT. Inside a false-bottom toiletries case, tucked beneath a plastic tray of shaving equipment, agents recovered 17 vacuum-sealed bricks of a white crystalline powder, each brick weighing between 982 and 1,004 grams, each brick stamped with a small pressed symbol resembling a stylized crescent. Field tests returned presumptive positive for fentanyl at a concentration later laboratory confirmed at 84.6% purity. The second bag opened belonged to the assistant engineer with the Navy duffel. Inside that duffel, sewn into a lining that had been restitched with a slightly darker thread than the original, agents recovered 41 additional bricks. By the end of the 14th hour, agents had cataloged 214 bricks of fentanyl across 9 of the 12 crew members' luggage, a total net weight of 211.8 kilograms, with an estimated wholesale street value of $29.4 million, based on then-current DEA Southern Region pricing. The bricks had been distributed with a logic that only became clear once the inventory log was laid flat on the exam hall table. No single crew member carried more than 12% of the total load, and each concealed compartment used a slightly different construction method, as if the network had been testing which methods survived which ports. By the time the boarding warrant was served on the vessel itself, agents already knew what they would find. The interesting part was what they didn't expect to find next to it. In the captain's stateroom, inside a locked drawer beneath the chart table, agents recovered a laptop, 2 encrypted mobile devices, a Thuraya satellite phone, and a single leather-bound ledger written in a mix of Farsi and shorthand English. The ledger contained columns of dates, port codes, weights, and a set of 5-letter alphanumeric strings that would later be matched to bill of lading references from 22 prior voyages across 3 different vessels. The margin of one page carried a handwritten annotation, in red pen, that translated roughly to, "The small ones through the west, the large ones through the south." Underneath it, in the same hand, someone had drawn a small crescent. The captain, when interviewed, said very little. The assistant engineer said less. The second officer, MT, asked for a lawyer before the interview room door had fully closed. But the 9th crew member interviewed, a junior deckhand, 22 years old, on his first international assignment, began speaking within 40 minutes, and what he described was not a smuggling operation, as investigators had understood the term. He described a logistics protocol. He used the word rotation. He used the word schedule. He said, more than once, that he had been told the bags were part of a system that had been running for a long time, and that the people who ran it were not on the ship, which brought investigators to the second figure in the file, and the first one whose name did not appear on any manifest. In the seized communications recovered from the encrypted devices, one contact appeared in 14 separate threads across 9 months, always addressed by the same understated nickname. The accountant. He was not on board the Sahand Arya. He had never been on board any of the vessels in the ledger. He was, according to eventual identification, a former mid-level compliance officer at a Dubai-based maritime insurance brokerage, a man in his late 50s with a resume that read like a career built out of avoiding attention. He had signed off on hull and machinery policies for over 400 vessels in his career. He had never been the subject of a regulatory complaint. His footprint in the shipping industry was, by every available measure, exemplary. In one intercepted signal message, dated the 2nd week of October, he had written to an unnamed counterpart, "The numbers don't have to lie. They only have to be tired enough that no one reads them twice." Sahand Arya was the signature. The accountant was the pen. Take a breath here. I had to, the first time I read the file, because the next page is where this stops being a fraud case and starts being something the public was never supposed to see. The public version of the case was released in 3 staggered press briefings over the following 10 weeks. The Department of Justice announced the seizure of approximately $29 million in fentanyl, the indictment of 9 crew members on federal narcotics importation charges, the seizure of the vessel under civil forfeiture, and the coordinated designation of 2 related shipping entities under Treasury sanctions authorities. Sentences ranged from 12 years to life. The wholesale disruption was quantified. The photo op included a table of bricks arranged in a neat grid, a folded American flag behind the podium, and a DEA administrator who used the phrase, "decisive blow," twice in 8 minutes. That was the version released to the press. The version inside the file was 42 pages longer. Inside the sealed portion of the case file, investigators had documented that the ledger recovered from the captain's stateroom was not a record of one operation. It was a record of a template. The 5-letter alphanumeric strings, once decoded against the recovered bill of lading references, mapped to at least 3 parallel routes, one running through the port of Long Beach using refrigerated cargo vessels, one running through the port of Savannah using bulk carriers, and one running through the port of Newark using container ships. The Corpus Christi seizure represented, by the case agent's own internal estimate, less than 18% of the network's monthly throughput. In the 11 months preceding the Sahand Arya inspection, the same logistics protocol had moved an estimated 1,340 kilograms of fentanyl through United States ports, generating an estimated wholesale revenue of $182 million, of which financial forensic accountants were eventually able to trace $47.6 million through 4 nearly identical shell entities incorporated in 3 states. And the network had a protector. The internal file identified, by name, title, and clearance level, a senior officer within a federal maritime coordination body whose sign-off had appeared on 17 inspection waiver requests for vessels later matched to the ledger. 9 internal warnings had been filed by junior analysts, flagging inconsistencies in those waivers over a period of roughly 14 months. Each warning had been logged, routed, and closed without escalation. The senior officer, when eventually interviewed under proffer, did not deny the pattern. He offered, instead, a phrase that appeared in the transcript in quotation marks and was underlined by hand in the case agent's copy. I approved what I was given to approve. This was not a failure of the system. The system performed exactly as it had been quietly reconfigured to perform. Somewhere in Ohio, a woman named Denise keeps a voicemail on her phone that she has not been able to delete. It is from her son, 26 years old, and it is 41 seconds long. He is asking her if she has any cash she can send him for the week. He tells her he is doing better. He tells her he loves her. He was found the following Tuesday in the parking lot of a gas station off Interstate 71. The medical examiner's report listed the cause as acute fentanyl toxicity. The batch matched, by chemical signature and pressed symbol, one of the bricks recovered from the Sahand Arya. What the file still does not say is who the accountant was reporting to. It does not say why 3 of the ledger's alphanumeric strings correspond to voyages that, according to every available shipping database, never occurred. It does not say why the senior maritime official's sign-off stopped, cleanly and without explanation, 6 weeks before the Corpus Christi inspection, as if someone, somewhere, had known the operation was about to be surfaced and had decided that this particular branch was the one that could be lost. Investigators have not answered whether the Sahand Arya was caught, or whether the Sahand Arya was offered. They have not answered how many other tankers, on how many other Wednesday mornings, are currently sitting at berths where the motion sensors have been recalibrated and not switched back on. What was uncovered in Corpus Christi is a fragment. The architecture exists in ports that have not yet been audited, on vessels whose crew lists have not yet been cross-referenced, in the quiet office of at least one compliance officer who has not yet been named. If this story stayed with you, comment filed below. It tells me you want the ones the headlines skipped. Subscribe if you want to be here when the next file opens. There's no shouting on this channel, just the parts that were left out. The next file we open sits 3,000 miles to the north, in a Great Lakes port where a customs officer noticed that a container of frozen seafood had been weighed twice, and the second number was heavier than the first. The next file is already open,